All right, we are back live. I'll reconvene our meeting, continuing on with Councillor Van Nieuwkerk on the category line of fleet and equipment growth. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And question around in the fleet and equipment growth, just around the crack ceiling trailer, 130,000 for 2023. I guess let me start with a question. So the question is, no, I'll start with a comment. Is obviously if admin put it in the budget, that means that you're confident that we have enough staff to run it. And that we have a place to store it and the expertise to use it and on all of those things. So my question is that we have the pothole machine or unit that gets used around the community. However, at times, messaging from administration to the community when questioned about potholes is we have to finish doing, or the staff have to finish doing other stuff before they can get the pothole machine out and go fill the potholes. And in this last year, the community did hear that from city administration. So my concern is if we add the crack ceiling trailer to the plethora of items that we have, that, you know, are we going to have to finish doing other stuff and potholes before we can go do the crack ceiling, right? Like, so, you know, so I guess what I am questioning, I guess, is staffing. So, you know, last night's motion aside, you know, if we fast forward to June and all's well and good and the staffing positions have been moved forward and all that kind of stuff, the question is, you know, will we have adequate staff to use that crack ceiling trailer alongside the pothole trailer and alongside everything else that needs to be done to make sure that we're doing those things at the right time on the calendar? Because there are better times to do that type of work.
Mr. Lewicki, give me 1 second, find your mic. There you are.
Through the mayor to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. Yes, we have the staff to man the trailer. The idea is we won't have all equipment on the road at all times. And sometimes I feel like there's that expectation that if we have a piece of equipment, it should be out there. They do things in a rotation of how they need to do it. We are looking at streamlining our means to do, you know, we got to do street sweeping. There's a process where we do street sweeping. We got to do crack filling. We got to do potholes. We got to do line painting. We're definitely looking at ways to streamline and do that better. This trailer will help us do that and also help us to build future capacity for better proactive maintenance of the roadways in Beaumont.
Yeah, that's good. And then subsequent to that would be by putting this in the budget, I would assume that administration has evaluated third-party service against doing it ourselves and found that having a trailer to do it ourselves is advantageous for cost, timing, availability, all that kind of stuff. Can you speak to that?
Through the mayor to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, yes, we have done that, and we currently do use a third-party contracted services to do that work. And the evaluation has indicated that there is a benefit to the city to have our own unit and have our staff operate it. It also allows us to, you know, we could do this later in the year too, as we need to. So as opposed to contracting and doing it once, we can send a trailer at different times of the year too, to ensure that we're getting all the cracks filled. Or when the teams are lighter in the mid part of the year, we could send it out again too. So it gives us a lot more flexibility, ensures that our roadways are being proactively maintained, and it allows for future growth.
Yeah, and these things last quite a while too, right? It's, you know, okay, thank you. Appreciate it, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Muckle-Swing, you had your button on before the break. Did you wish to continue with the question on this area? You're good? Okay, seeing no further questions, we are fine then with fleet and equipment growth. We'll now move on to dog park at Beaumont Remnant Park. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, your button went on quickly. Is that the topic? Please proceed, Steve. Thank you.
Sounds good. Just wanted to I was going to start with a motion, but I'm going to start with a question because I may not make a motion on this one. So where my head was at is the dog park at Remnant Park is, a dog park that would be built in the center of the community. It would be, in the Poutine Park area is how people know it more, I think, than Remnant Park. I was confused on that myself. And my concern isn't with the project, it's with the timing. We have a development that's been trying to get off the ground, L'Esprit, and it would be directly south of that. And there's an alleyway next door to the north that needs improvement. The potholes swallow cars, not even bikes anymore. And then we're going to go build a nice facility in the middle of all of that. And so my concern comes with the timing, because if L'Esprit, like how are we going to tie our nice investment in this park and facility to the surrounding property? Like how are we going to do that if we approve it in this term? I guess that's my question to admin. I'll start there. How are we going to make sure we transition that nicely? Because do we have all the designs from L'Esprit? Do we know where their sidewalks are going to start and end? Do we know how far they're coming north? Are they going to leave big dirt piles in the way that are going to have to be moved later and we'll have to move a fence, or they're going to wreck something while we're, how is that timing all going to work?
Mr. Deller, I see your button is on. Would you care to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, again, the short answer to your question, Councillor Van Newkirk, is we probably just don't know at this stage. Those are all excellent questions. And I think as we go through the design and looking at what could be there in terms of a dog park, we would source out the answers to those things. But at this point in time, we just haven't gone that far down the path to really provide any answers at this point in time to a lot of those, I would say, elements or pieces that are contingent or kind of in alignment with putting in the park there. Because you're right. Yeah, you wouldn't want to make an investment and then have it ripped up or have it impaired by the development that's going on to the south. So definitely some things that we would have to work through in 2023.
Yeah, do we have any visibility on L'Esprit? There's conversation in the community that you hear, but do we know timing on that project? Has it been approved? Is it being planned? Is there still a back and forth? What do we know about the project just relative to the timing of making a dog park?
I wouldn't have too many details to share. I don't know if Miss Raymond would or not, but yeah, I'm not exactly sure. So if Miss Raymond has any kind of idea on timing, then I'd throw it over to her.
Sorry.
Yes,
Currently, we are reviewing the development permit application for the Esprit site right now. I would assume that they would be breaking ground next year if they had approval, but that's just a guess.
So as part of that approval process, we would understand what their plan is, like for the north side of the lot. Like my concern is the transition between our investment and their construction site, and the timing of that, right? So do we know on the north side of what they're building there? Is it going to be sidewalk? Is it going to be pavement, or is it going to be, grass? Like, do we know any of that yet, or not so much?
Through the mayor to Councillor Van Newkirk, my understanding is that there is a retaining wall that would be directly north of the dog park, Saunterville Park area. And then it goes into, there's some parking that would be in and behind. That would be kind of that transition that's there. Yeah, a lot of their surface treatment is parking.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that piece of information alleviates my concern if we're gonna have, hard structure there and whatnot, and we're gonna invest $100 and some thousand bucks into the dog park and design and all that, so.
They are aware of the city's plans or tentative plans for development of this, so they would be taking that into account as well.
100%, and they should. It's a complementary service to what they're building, and we're investing in something right beside them that their users are going to use, right? So, yeah, okay, thank you. That's good for me for now.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCough-Swain. Sam?
Yeah, sorry, I was ready to do battle with Steve, but it looks like he's come to the right place. So I'm good. I would just add that it's not just an off-leash park, but a community garden as well, which we've put a lot of focus on. So I'm very excited to see this. I thought your questions were excellent, Steve. And I think you got the comfort. I wasn't thinking that way, but I got additional comfort there. So I got nothing more.
Thank you. Councilor Barnhart, you're good? I don't see your hand up. So I want to make sure you're included in the conversation.
Mayor, I just have a question for Mr. Dowler when you get a chance to come back to me, just in general.
Okay, let me finish off this topic first, and we'll come back to you, okay?
Okay.
Thank you very much. Any further comments? My only thoughts are, I like the idea of having the dog park in the Centreville Remnant Park area. My only thoughts are the size of it, only because the dog park we have already built, the small dog park and the large, even the small dog park is quite a sizable piece of land. And that area is somewhat finite. So I really want to make sure we maximize walking paths, a band shell, place to sit down, benches by trees, so there's shade for people. I just wonder how big the dog might be, because in previous plans, you didn't have a dog park in there. So I'm not saying no to the idea just yet, but I want to see how it fits into the plan. And if it works, great. I'd like to see the plan design first. I'm not prepared to vote against this idea at this point. So, Councilor McCook, would you just add a comment?
Yeah, Mayor, just to your point there, will we see plans and designs prior to this project moving forward?
Thank you for that question, Councilor McCook. Very similar to the facility project that we have in the proposed capital budget. Yes, the intent would be to bring forward some design and some concepts to council, and certainly engage with council on the amenities that would be going into those spaces.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, councilors. So I believe that concludes the discussion on the dog park, and there's no amendments or changes or motions to it. So Councilor Barnard, I'll come back to you now for your question you wanted to get on the floor. So Kathy, please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. And I apologize for the confusion before, but it looks like I had 2 pages mixed up. But I think it's clear my intent here is to look at ways in which we can not necessarily defer things forever, but to put them off so that we don't have all of the asks coming in the same year. So my question to Mr. Dowler, wish I could be there in person because it's much easier to ask these questions than the way I'm doing it. But theoretically, if we were to look at, if council wanted to reduce the amount of money spent on pay-as-you-go in any one year, are you saying that that amount that's in the budget right now, 807.5, is somehow set based on some other policy that I'm forgetting? Or is it not possible that we could reduce that by 200,000 and defer whatever priorities we have to the next year?
Mr. Dowler.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Barnhart. So maybe I'll start with, is the 807,500 set in the budget? It is. It's not specifically aligned to a policy of council. It is a mechanism that administration has employed over the last several years to provide some more flexibility in our capital program. The 807, if you think about it in terms of a program, so just like any other program in the operating budget that we offer, primarily funded from taxes, there is a base amount that is included and built up over the years. So subsequent tax increases have really allowed us to come to this point of $807,000 in the operating budget that's transferred to capital to fund capital projects through pay-as-you-go. So in the event that you wanted to defer a project that is currently funded from pay-as-you-go, that can absolutely be done. And I guess it really becomes a matter of how that is done and what the motion would look like coming from council. in a very simple way, one motion could be just simply to defer the project and we wouldn't proceed with the project. The pay-as-you-go dollars that would support or fund that project would just be held. We wouldn't spend the money. There would be no impact to taxes. Excuse me. A second way that that could be done would be very similar to the motion that was on the floor previously around reducing the pay-as-you-go funding or pay-as-you-go program by $200,000 for 2023. And if that was a motion that was approved by council, you would not only defer capital projects, but you would also reduce your tax increase in 2023. Now, maybe just stop there and see if that provides any clarity or has maybe addressed your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Dowler. And that is how I've understood it. And I erred in the fact that I was looking on the wrong pages. There's one other project that's listed there under pay-as-you-go, page 88. And that was, we passed it already, Mayor. I apologize for that, but facilities design and engagement. And I was wondering, not that that isn't a valuable thing to be doing, but is that not something that could come out of operating or some other means of funding that in the future rather than it be pay-as-you-go? And again, I know in the past we've used things like municipal reserve, where we have one-time only expenditures rather than putting them on to ongoing tax levy. Again, is there another way in which we can get to the point where, I'm sure you as administrators have looked at how can we keep the tax levy increase from being too high, but I'm not giving up too easily here because I really do think it's not just operating. I think we also have to look at capital.
So I think if I understand your intent, Councillor Barnhart, and if it is to reduce the 7.4 for 2023, and if you're looking at how to do that through the capital budget, you are really only left with, in this particular case, maybe two options that I can think of off the top of my head here. One would be to put forward a motion to reduce pay-as-you-go. So you basically reduce the 807. The second option would be to direct administration not to proceed with debt. And even at that, as I say that, I don't know if the operating impacts of that debt are actually built into the 23 budget. It would probably be 24. So you're really only left with one option. If you want to influence the tax increase from the capital budget, it really is just pay as you go and reducing the 807 pay as you go program to a number that you would be comfortable with, I guess, in terms of the reduction it would have on the tax levy increase. So again, using about $220,000 as an approximate for a 1% tax increase. If that's what you were looking to do, it would be to reduce the pay-as-you-go by $220,000.
And Mr. Dowler, just to follow up on that, would the administration be, would the best way to go there would be to say to the administration, reduce it by 220,000 and come back with an option of how to do that, rather than looking at a particular project and saying, take it out of there?
I think, yes, Councillor Barnhart, that would be the easiest mechanism or the easiest motion for administration. We could then take that away and come back with the implications for council. It would mean certain projects that are currently proposed as funded would no longer be funded. We would just have to determine which of those would be appropriate.
And that's in the capital area. Okay, I appreciate that, Mr. Dowler, and I did understand pay as you go correctly. As I said, I got myself twisted around on which page I was looking at. So appreciate the clarification. Mayor, I don't know if you want to proceed with that motion or if you want me to
Well, Council, my question
field
is,
any questions.
after that, do you wish to make a motion and then we can debate that motion based on what's been said already? Or do you want to give it some more thought and come back to you a little bit later? If you want, I'd prefer to do what you feel comfortable with. What do you want to do?
Well, I do believe Miss Winter's been helping me with motion in the background here. I'm not sure, I can't see her, whether she's got that or not.
We'll wait for that to come up on the screen.
There you go. She worked her magic. So, Mayor, I'm going to give this a go here because I do feel that it's going to be a tough year for all of the things that we've said, and I particularly know it's going to be tough on a lot of our residents. So as much as I would have appreciated going through some of the operating budget to see where that would have ended up, I feel like I don't have any other options at this point other than to look at the capital in this way. And so I'm making the motion that the pay-as-you-go funding be reduced by $220,000 in the 2023 capital budget. And I think I've made it quite clear why I'm doing that. And perhaps councillors can ask clarifying questions if they have any.
Thank you, Councillor Barnhart. Councillor Van Newkirk, you had your button on for a minute or two there before the motion came up. Would you care to speak?
Sure, I can speak to that. I appreciate the intent of what Councillor Barnhart is trying to do, which is minimize the impact on the tax levy. From my view, I do think that there's a more effective conversation to be had in March around the municipal operating budget. I think there's adequate opportunity to look at, you know, the percentage that we're going to push out to the residents of Beaumont in that conversation. In my view, by reducing the pay-as-you-go by $220,000, those are all items growth items that are required, and we're just going to push that need to next year. Whereas, you know, in the municipal operating budget, we perhaps have an opportunity to break up programs into pieces or change scopes or reduce scopes to still achieve the things we're trying to achieve. So I think that the efforts are better spent in the municipal operating conversation rather than a 220 reduction in these, simply because this just defers that 220 needing to be spent next budget. So that's my thoughts on this.
Thank you,
motion.
Councillor.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Councillor McCook, followed by Councillor Tessier, followed by Councillor Miller. Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. And I agree with Councillor Van Newkirk. I appreciate the intent of this motion. However, we still get an opportunity to go through the operating budget. So there is still an opportunity to discuss how we can lower the tax levy. So that hasn't gone away. And I'm not sure I'm comfortable with just the dollar value and not knowing what will be impacted in capital budget or what will be removed. So that's, I agree with Councillor Van Newkirk in the sense that we still get to hit things in the operating budget, and I'm just not super clear on what will be impacted with this. So I'm just not sure that I can support this motion at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tessier, followed by Councillor Miller. Renee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Barnhart, for bringing this forward. And I asked a couple of questions around this as well, just to understand that pay-as-you-go portion. And from what I understand, it's at $807,500. So, we can add things to that without affecting the tax levy every year, and that's kind of the point. I don't really want to see it decrease and then having us to increase it back and forth. So I rather just deal with the tax levy in March, whether that's 0%, 7%, 3%, whatever that is, and have those discussions there. But I really don't want to halt growth in that regard to go down and then back up. So I'm kind of with the other councillors at this point right now, but I do appreciate you bringing this forward.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Miller. Ashley, you have the floor.
Just short and sweet. Thanks, Counselor Barnhart, for bringing this forward. I'm on the same page. I get the intention of the motion. I'm not in favor of the motion at this time, just because I do look for that opportunity in March, or forward to that opportunity in March, and that's where I'm at. So I will not be voting in favor of this, but thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Counselor. Seeing no further hands up to speak, Counselor Barnhart, you wish to have a final comment before I ask for the vote on your motion, please?
Well, the only comment I'd make, Mayor, is perhaps we don't even have to vote on it if I withdraw it. Because maybe that's the wrong process, and Ms. Winter can tell me, no, we need to vote on it now. I appreciate hearing from the rest of council, but I do think that a little short-sighted on their part, because I do think that the operating budget is going to be very difficult to reduce given the way we're going now. But I'm comfortable either way. Mayor, if I could withdraw it, I will withdraw it, because I can see it's not going to pass.
Okay, so just to confirm, you are withdrawing your motion, correct?
As long as that's legal.
Yes. Counselor Barnhart, appreciate that. All right, we will now move on then to the next line item, public art. Are any members of council have any concerns, questions, motions on the public art line on the capital growth? Councilor McCook, Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you. The public art that we are putting forward, is it always local art? Or will this one specifically be local?
Mr. Suter.
Thanks for the question, through your worship, to Councilor McCook. I can't answer that right now. That's something that would be determined through the process that the Arts Council would administer on behalf of us, on behalf of the city. It would be open to obviously local artists or participants to submit their proposals for the public art. And then they would evaluate it based on the criteria that they've established. So I just couldn't say 100% that it would be guaranteed to a local resident. No.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Thank you,
Yeah.
Counselor. See no further requests to speak. I will move on to the next line on the growth budget, growth capital budget, which is St. Vital Disc Golf relocation. Any questions, concerns, comments, motions from council members on that line of capital growth? Seeing none. Town Square Plaza is next in the line there. Questions, comments, concerns, motions on this? Wow, 3 people already. Here we go. Councilor Mokoff-Swayne, followed by Councilor Tessier, followed by Councilor Van Nieuwkerk. So Sam, you have the floor, please.
Yeah, thanks. So this is kind of the second shot at this. For those who weren't around before, we had a Town Square Plaza in the budget for about 800,000 previously, and now we're at 350. So looking at what I see in here, I'm just curious on why we're only recommending 350,000. Previously, we talked about 800,000. So I'm just wondering why we've cut that effectively, or more than in half. Obviously, you guys put forward 350,000 for a reason, and you think you can get it done. This is going to be the center point of our community here, and I don't want to cheap out on it. So if I'd rather provide more capital funding dollars to be able to do this properly. So I'd like to hear some thoughts on why we're only at 350.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Mokoff-Swayne. I think the difference in the price, to start there, is a reflection on kind of a scaled down version of what you see here today versus what was maybe contemplated previously, as well as a different location. I think that's the key part. I mean, previously we were looking at a location that's kind of tucked in behind some buildings, not necessarily front and center. So maybe a little bit awkward in terms of a town square kind of concept. This one being right on the main street, much more front and center. The size of the space obviously is a bit of a difference as well. And so looking at enhancing that space and turning it into a town square kind of idea, we felt was not going to be the same kind of cost that was associated with the previous location. And some different maybe amenities attached to it. I think there was some technology that was maybe included in the 850 previously that wouldn't necessarily be part of the 350 project that we have in front of council in this budget.
Yeah, so thank you. I'm with you on different space. But then you also said scaled down, and that made me nervous. If we want people to come to this part of the city, I'd rather provide more funding to do it right the first time. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's fair. And I guess scaled down from a footprint standpoint, more so than anything else. Like some of the other projects that we've talked about here today, what the intent of this would be is to do some preliminary design, bring it back to council, get some feedback, get some public feedback. I know we've heard from some community groups already around what they would like to see in a town square kind of idea. So to collect some of that feedback, I mean, originally this was just intended to better utilize some space that was very public facing, very much in the center of Centreville. So, you know, it can certainly evolve from there. But again, I think we're somewhat restricted given the footprint that we're dealing with here.
Yeah, and obviously there's an impact to, I don't know if temporary business is the right word, and you'll go through and consider all of that. Yeah, I guess looking forward to going through the design and coming back to council, and I'll just say don't be afraid to bring back if you need additional budget requests to make it look and feel like a town square that we can be proud of. So I'm good with it. I hope we can get it done this time. Let's go. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tessier, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk. Renee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Monkoff-Swain, for bringing that up. I'm kind of going down the same hole here, same rabbit hole for maybe, is it enough money, right? Because I look at a lot of things, like we have one chance to really do it right. And if you ever go back and have to add things, it always costs more. And it's going to be a huge face of our city. Like I look at the events we put on for Beaumont Days with the big tent and all that there, and that rent is expensive. And there's got to be at least 200-300 people in that space, in that tent, plus outdoor markets, things like that. So I would love to see like a bigger stage, something that when you come in, it looks really good and we can use it for other events. I know a couple people from the arts committee, or one of the two committees, have kind of discussed that, because they're going to be moving from what will now be the dog park and urban community garden probably to that space. So if we need more money to do it, now would be the time. Like I understand that it's saying for a small band shell, gazebo, and cenotaph, 100% on the cenotaph. That's great to see that in here, but a small band shell, are we able to accommodate the type of bands we've used in the past without adding additional stages, that type of thing? Like I really think we have an opportunity to make this something special in the heart of our city. So.
And I think administration would agree with you, Councillor Tessier. We are looking at making this a special community focused space. I think what we as administration can commit to doing is in the new year, bringing back some preliminary designs on what it could look like, and get some feedback from council at the very least on those images. And if there's pieces missing that council would like to see, have that conversation. We can then take that away, go away and get some further pricing potentially if required, and then come back prior to March or at the same time that we're in front of council discussing the operating budget. And if there is additional funding required, have that conversation at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Newkirk. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Dowler, for committing to the designs to come back to council to have a look. That was one of the things I was going to ask, so I do appreciate that. As part of the consideration for this project, what is the ability to explore expanding it west into the parking lot? What does that look like? Does that infringe on the parking requirements of the commercial plaza there? Presumably it's not for sale, but everything's for sale, right? Like, you know how that works. So how would we explore that, and what considerations would we need? How might that impact timing? Loaded question, I know, but it's yours now.
Thanks for that, Councillor Van Newkirk. I think obviously at this point in time, I don't, again, have a lot of answers for you. It is something that I think we can look at again after we've come back to council. And if the design doesn't meet what council's looking for or is expecting, I think some of those other questions that you raised are maybe some things that we can explore as to what that would look like if it is, requiring an expansion of the space or the footprint. Looking at the options to expand to the west and what that could look like, or the timing of that as well.
Yeah, and I think that just, including that thought process in, if administration isn't quite happy with the design there, right? I just look at how much good we've been able to do with all right space, and think about how much good we can do in the community with an awesome space, right? So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Hang on, wrong thing here. Paul, get a question?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to add to Mr. Dowler's comments that, as we know, that space is not that large. So it is a focal point already with the community and some of the activities that go on there. The intention of, I think, this project would be to enhance what is going on there now, potentially make it a more beautiful space, a more usable space. But I would also just like to remind council, the funds that are in that facility design engagement piece may also present an opportunity for a much larger town square or city plaza in the future. So I don't want to hang our potentially all the eggs in one basket on this small chunk of land. I think this was a quick win, as we identified earlier, and maybe make it more usable, more beautiful center park. But is it the answer to all the wants and needs? I would say no. It just won't fit there likely. However, that other project may lend itself to where we need to go or could go with a much better project for a town, city square, plaza, whatever you want to call it. So that was my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Suter. Appreciate that. See no further comments from council. It's my own little comment quickly. It's not often council wants to spend more money on a project. You can appreciate that. But I do think the points made by council members that the focal point of this location is quite inducive to make sure we get it done right. And we have done many things right. The football field, artificial turf field, the ball diamonds, the dog park. Recent projects have been done very, very well and well received by the community. I think this park would be another example of a great focal point for our city. So maybe the report could come back saying, at 350 we can do this, but maybe a little more we can do that, and we can get a chance to kind of debate that in the future. But I'm prepared to continue with the 350 in the capital growth budget as presented. See nobody else to the contrary. We'll move on to the next topic, which is the Zamboni storage garage. It's a very exciting topic, I'm sure. Mr. Lewicki, would you care to speak to that? I saw you move your mic. No, anticipating your question? Okay. Unless you want to head off the question with a couple of comments. Okay, seeing none from Mr. Lewicki. Any comments from council, motions, concerns on this topic? Seeing none. Moving right along to traffic safety. Mr. Lewicki. All right, attaboy. Step up, step up. There you go.
Sorry, I was anticipating questions. One thing I did want to note in our previous discussion with the skate shelters, and I didn't realize, I indicated that we would consider building these in alignment. You will notice that the funds for construction for the Zamboni storage garage are in 2024. So I just wanted to clarify that, and I missed that one in my previous comment, that we could not build them in conjunction with each other as the budget is structured currently. I just want to make that clear. So there might be an opportunity, we either move it or we look at a staged approach or we do them separately as we had planned. Just wanted to make that comment.
Just gonna say, you had the win and you opened the door, so now we have, we have questions. I'm just teasing you. Sam?
Thank you for pointing that out. So on the financial plan, can you just point to the page here just so I can get to the number?
Page 101.
124? 123, pardon me. At the bottom.
There we go. So what I'm hearing from you is basically either bring the 120,000 forward or push the 20,000 back.
Through the mayor to Councillor Monkoff Swain. It's fine the way it is. All I'm saying is that what I indicated before is I said that we would build them together, but the way the budget is structured, we wouldn't be able to do that. So I was just making a correction in what I had stated previously.
But there are efficiencies of doing in terms of impact construction, all that sort of stuff. If we're going to do it,
That would be correct.
bring 120,000 forward from the 2024 capital plan into 2023. Yeah, so I'll make that motion. Sorry. Yeah. This is dangerous. Okay. Fine. It gets the same.
It'll come out in the wash. It should come out in the wash. I think it's 101 in the capital section.
I think the motions is just as straightforward as bringing forward 100 or adding $120,000 to the Zamboni storage garage project in 2023.
Okay. Hang on. You want to talk about funding method from what affects the tax levy?
Yes, that will be included. So the budget will be 140. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, you'll save it, but they'll use what they need.
We'll just wait until the motions finish to be drafted. We'll just be back to you in a moment. If you're listening from home.
So I'll move that the Zamboni storage garage project be increased by 120,000 in the 2023 capital budget. And I'll speak to that if I can.
Yep, and I'll go to Ms. Miller for a question as well or comment. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, so hopefully there's some efficiencies around the designing here with this project, as well as the Ashley's skate shacks that you could find, and just again, I know we've asked this a million times and we get the same answer every time. Don't tell us or don't ask us where you're going to fund this from. You're going to fund this from. So this will be out of either MSI or the federal gas tax. So let me ask it a different way, because we keep asking that way and we get the same answer. By doing this, we're not going to increase the tax levy, right? Thank you. That's good for me.
Ashley?
I apologize. I didn't know my button was still going. I guess if I can add to that, the $20,000 design work we don't need to include because that'll essentially be picked up by the initial design work from the skate shacks.
Most likely, but Mr. Lewicki, would you care to elaborate on that? Oh, hang on, I'll get your mic on there. There you go.
The motion says.
Through the
120.
mayor to Councillor Miller, honestly, hard to say. I can't say that there'll be complete design efficiencies in putting two into one.
Okay.
I would prefer to ensure that we have the funds to do the full design as intended. So I wouldn't assume that we can cut it in half and do that.
Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, so to be clear, the motion, the keyword there be increased by, so the storage, the Zamboni storage garage project in here is 20,000. We're going to increase it by 120,000, so 140.
So change motion to 140. That's what I thought you meant. Okay, right. Yeah. Okay, so we're clear. We're good. All right. Councillor Barnhart, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
I do, Mayor, and maybe the question is to Councillor Munkoff Swain. To your point about the no impact on the tax levy, the motion doesn't say that. And I know in the past budget deliberations, we have included source of funding. So I'm just feeling quite legitimately nervous about the fact that we're increasing, but we're not taking anything away. And we're basically leaving it for administration to work it out, do their magic. But I would really prefer that it said with no impact on the tax levy.
Sam, would you care?
Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Barnhart, challenging for you in Germany. When I asked the question, Mr. DeBlanco shook his head to indicate that this would not increase the tax levy. So maybe we'll get Mr. DeBlanco just to speak to that.
Mr. Blanco?
Thank you. So once again, funding sources, likely to be funded from grants as the rink shacks are potentially to be done. So the funding mechanism would not increase the tax levy. Council is well aware that there are operating components to projects, operating impacts of capital to operate the storage garage. So there would be likely, Mr. Luke, you can speak to what it would cost to operate a Zamboni storage garage, but that would be the impact to tax levy. So just to be clear, there would be the operating impact, but the funding source as likely proposed to be grants would not have an impact on tax levy.
Yeah, I think where people are getting confused is the initial 20,000 is in pay as you go, right, for the study of it. But if you were to do this budget over again and you saw the 120,000, it would go under the grants column for the 120,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments on the motion? Seeing none, Council, I will ask you to vote on the motion before you. Councillor Barnhart, how do you vote?
Reluctantly in favor.
I'm sorry, you said you were in favor?
I am.
Thank you. That carries unanimously. Thank you, Council. Seeing that the item taken care of, next on the item on growth is traffic safety program. Questions, comments, concerns, recommendations, or motions from council on traffic safety program? Councilor Munkoff Swain, Sam?
Sorry, I'll be quick here. So I'm very excited to see this, especially the flashing lights at the crosswalks. Something I asked about last budget. So really appreciate administration listening to that and bringing it forward in this one. My only question was going to be again, and you know, this is coming out of reserves, so again, no impact from the tax levy directly. Is there enough? Like, have we looked at, like, my goal would be to have every crosswalk on Beaumont have this. So do you have a rough idea of what ratio that would provide? Like, does this mean we'll get up to 20%, 50%, 75%, 100% of those crosswalks with those flashing lights?
Mr. Lewicki?
Through the mayor to Councillor Monkoff Swain, the part of the scope of this is to determine the need. Obviously, we compare all of our crosswalk requirements to the regulations that we have to follow to make sure that we're doing our due diligence from a safety perspective. So part of this funding will allow us to evaluate what we need. So for instance, this year we did the 3 crosswalks and we did a bunch of signage. Actually, everything outside of the curb extension program was completed as planned this year.
Yeah, I mean, I hope we can get through that quickly and get going. Like, I mean, I could point you to 1,000 residents in Colonial who would love that 4-way stop as you come in there just before school there to be done. So yeah, I think, I guess as a similar thing before, like as you go through those studies, you know, if there is efficiencies in ordering this stuff in bulk as opposed to doing it, because I don't see this in 2024, 2025, 2026, a capital ask. So I was hoping that we would get a lot of coverage out of this. So I'd be interested in bringing that report back when that comes back, just to make sure that I know that what our coverage ratio would be. So I don't think it's a question for budget, but maybe I'll ask a written question through our regular process to get a better sense of that. But
through the mayor to Councillor Monkoff Swain, the report or this funding will provide us a clearer idea of what we need. If it's determined that we have a lot of trouble areas that we need to increase that funding, we'll bring that back and say, look, the report identified these areas that are deficient. This is what we need to fix that. So we'd be prepared to do that.
Great. Thank you. I support this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councilman Newkirk, followed by Councillor Tessier. Steve?
Yeah, thank you. So I think what I heard there from Mr. Lewicki is that there will be some engagement on this. Is that true? Or is it going to be an internal look at where administration thinks the resources should be placed?
Through the mayor to Councillor Van Newkirk, this is not an internal. It's what we do with this is we contract it to a firm, a consultant who does this work and understands what the requirements are, what the safety requirements are for crosswalks and signage and things like that. So it's not based on engagement, it's based on regulations and safety factors and things like that. So we consult with them, they provide us the priorities, and then we report back on that.
Yeah, if there was any way for that process to include engagement, I think it would be handy. The residents are a great resource they know where the near misses are every day. They know where the vehicles are speeding on straightaways. They know where the problems are. They know where, you know, they're waiting incessantly at a 4-way stop at 8 in the morning to try and cross and getting frustrated and just putting their arm out and going, right? So I 100% respect the firm's ability to do those things. But what I would say is you can't underscore the community's knowledge for where this would go. So if there's any way to include public engagement in that, I think it would be a good thing to do. Throw up a post and ask people what they think. Even, you know, Mr. Parasos, he can collect that and give it to you. Like, you know, it need not be horribly in depth, but I think we owe it to the residents to ask. So that's just my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor. I cannot agree more with your assessment on the public engagement part. The residents don't know where the hotspots are, and the consultant may not interpret that from a map or a visit on his own or her own for that matter. So I would encourage a couple open houses, or whatever administration feels that engagement could be done would be beneficial, I think. Councillor Tessier, Renee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to go on a little bit of a different route for this one. I just wanted to talk about the curb extensions and when we got that report and how we had that discussion at 56A and Rue Montelay and 55th Avenue. I'm just waiting for a certain process question, but I would like to change that 55th Avenue one to a meridian instead of the curb extensions, kind of like we discussed when we got that report. We didn't think that it would be effective due to the actual turn of the ring road. I think it might be effective on the Rue Monolay and 56A Street. But, and we can pilot on that side, but I would rather see a meridian, and that was kind of the end of the discussion is what I thought we all wanted. So I don't know how to go about that. I'm just in the middle of asking and finding out, but I don't know if that's a motion I can put forward to see how that ends up, but it is something I would rather see on that side just because of the way the way that road
I
ends up.
anticipate probably notice a motion, but unless Ms. Boujea had like to offer a comment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Tessier. That's a bit of a tough one because that's a decision that administration makes within its sphere of influence, its professional opinion. You know, that is a decision. It's not really a budgetary matter. That decision was arrived at based on subject matter expertise. So I think that the mayor actually had a good idea that we could do perhaps a notice of motion to get more information and a report on how that decision was arrived. And we could do that to have maybe have that report come forward early in the new year. And if it turns out that there is a reason to make a change to any plans, they could be addressed at that time. So I can certainly work with you to make sure that we make that happen for the next council meeting.
Okay, I appreciate that. I obviously the report came back and I do respect the report. I just, you know, I guess we could just see how the curb extension program pilot comes back. And it would be something I would like to be part of that report of that pilot program, right? Because curb extensions are not a new thing. They're in everywhere you go. So, all right, I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Seeing no further discussion or hands up regarding traffic safety program. Seeing none, we'll move on then. Yeah, that concludes the growth section of what's on the actual budget itself on page 88. Now is the opportunity for any council members who may have motion to perhaps add to the growth capital plans. I see Kat, you have your hand up. I have a motion myself. I'll bring it at the end of the conversation. So Councillor McCook, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a motion to bring forward. That funding in the amount of $50,000 be added to the 2023 capital budget for the purpose of developing the first phase of a lighting program in Beaumont, which will provide information on which public spaces, parks, trails, and paths would benefit from increased lighting, as well as recommendations on options for lighting and the prioritization of lighting locations. I wanted to bring this forward because I think we've heard time and time again from our residents that there are areas in Beaumont that could really use some lighting. We have a lot of people who still use the trails at night. Kids are often in the parks. So I think adding some lighting would be key. And I know we've talked about it a lot. And so I think at this point we need to begin somewhere and get the ball rolling. So this is where I'm
Thank you. Bring it
starting.
forward, Councillor. Thank you. Bring it forward. Much appreciated. Discussion on the motion from members of council. I know Sam, you got a hand up. Or you have, this is on not for you in this one, right? That's what I thought. No problem. Seeing no further questions. Oh, hang on. Councillor Miller. Ashley, you have the floor.
Yes, thanks, Councilor McCook, for bringing this forward. Just a question of clarity. So 50,000 be added for the purpose of developing the first phase of a lighting program, which will provide information. So I'm just, is that, are we wanting the lighting, or is this just a development phase to fund information?
Yes, thanks for the question. It's basically would be more information piece. So really gathering that information, understanding what lighting is available, how this lighting would impact, you know, residents around, and I think primarily too, where would be the best spaces to start with a lighting program. So,
okay.
And then subsequent funding would have to come to actually fund the lighting based on what we receive back.
Right. Okay, thank you for the clarity, and I will be supporting this motion as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. A quick question myself from me, Councillor Cook. So your expectation to have a report back and the dollar figure is probably is just a ballpark figure for now. It could will be less than that, I'm assuming at some point. Do we anticipate this being an internal document or an outside consultant? Do you have any idea at this point what your thoughts may be on that?
Turn to administration.
Would that be possibly an internal? Ms. O'Neill, welcome to council tonight.
Oh, finally. No, this would be an external document. Sorry, external consultant to support a lighting study.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the clarity. Any further discussion from, oh, sorry, Councillor Barnard, I see your hands up. Kathy, you have the floor.
And I apologize, Mayor, if it was said my computer went off and so I might have missed it. What is the source of the funding for the capital budget?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Dollar, your mic is on now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're changing it up on you here. Councillor Barnhart, I think, again, as Mr. DeBlanco said previously, the funding source for something like this would hopefully be grants. But again, this would be where we would have to do a little bit of working through the capital budget to find the appropriate funding source. And ultimately, you may see this become funded from pay-as-you-go to start with, and moving some of those pay-as-you-go projects that are currently identified into grant.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking to that is where I get kind of really confused by this. It seems like we have a never-ending pot of capital money. We're moving things around, and I know that's not the case, and I sound kind of flippant, but I'm not opposed to these projects, and it's just that they seem to be, we're adding. We're not taking anything away. We're not specifying where the money is coming from, and they all have impacts, and I want them all. I think we all do. But at some point, we have to have a little bit of discipline here as to what we're approving. And yeah, I'd like to see this as a report come back. But at this point, I'm feeling that I do have to vote against it, because I'm just not seeing that we're having any clarity here in terms of, I'm not getting clarity as to just how much are we going to keep spending and not pull back here at some point. So apologize for that. It's not about the project itself. I'd love to see it as well, but I don't think we can see all of these projects happening in 2023.
Councillor, seeing no further comments on this particular motion, I will ask council to vote on the motion before you. Councillor Barnard, how do you vote?
I think it's pretty clear I'm opposed, Mayor.
You're opposed? Thank you. That motion carries 6-1. Thank you, council. Having said that, council, Legislative Services has asked for a 5-minute break to catch up with some of their paperwork from our last little while of council. So we'll take a 5-minute break. We'll come back at around 8:05.